Welcome everyone to my free monthly Tuesday morning group coaching call. So I'm Susan Campbell. I think you all know me. And there'll be other people probably joining. So today our topic is culture wars and COVID. And then I subtitled it to vax or not to vax. And I'm interested in this topic for a couple of reasons, because it's dividing so many people who were friends or family, just like a lot of the other issues, like blue states and red states, that sort of thing. I mean, that's a very painful divide in our collective also. But this one is so current, and there really are two sides to the issue in my view. So I want to explore that. I feel like my own perspective is more of a witness of social evolution. So I want to say something about that. I did not speak about that. That's another purpose of this, doing this today. Besides just learning from others who are different and seeing how we react to people who have a different point of view than you do, I want to just put out this perspective. I think the collective is polarized in so many ways, and not just in the United States either, because there's an evolutionary drive for us to get to another level of consciousness. I really think crisis can be an opportunity. I understand things don't look too good for the humanity's survival on the planet right now. You know, things don't look too good there long term, but I like to look at what is this crisis forcing us to develop in ourselves as humans that we haven't developed before. And here's what I think that is. It's the ability to get above the level of the problem and find ways for humans to go, oh, it's our difference that is our challenge. How do we resolve our difference enough to take collective action? Because when a body of humans are in chaos, and some of you probably came from chaotic families, or you are therapists and you understand about chaotic environments. People don't feel safe. Nobody feels safe. And the collective can't even make decisions. So the US is reaching that point now where the body of humans cannot make decisions together because of the polarization. And we absolutely have to develop this ability to have more perspective on our right-wrongness. And those of you who've been with me since I wrote the book, Getting Real, you understand that the whole idea of getting real is to be able to loosen up on what I used to call the right, safe, and certain game. Loosen up on thinking you know, and open up to, hey, here's a new wave that just came. I'm a surfer, and I don't know what the next wave is going to be. I talk a lot about getting to the point where we're so in the moment, in our awareness of what's going on inside of us, and in our ability to perceive the environment, to tune in to what's going on for, let's say, your audience, whoever you're talking to. We're so attuned to that we can surf life instead of needing, like humans mostly do need now, to think in terms of categories and beliefs, and, you know, if this happened, then that means that. In the life of a surfer, they don't even bother with meaning. You know, the thing doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean it. Meaning slows you down. I'm not saying that there aren't times to be philosophical and reflect on the meaning of things, but making decisions in the moment, like a surfer surfs the ocean waves. I think that's the new human that's evolving. We'll probably be dead, but I'd like to make my contribution to the evolution of consciousness on this planet. So I'm going to do some different practices, exercises mostly, and then we will do some inner inquiry, looking at what triggers you about certain beliefs and values that people hold, triggers you about somebody who is different from you on this vaccine question. But first, I want to review a little bit. One of the things that we are learning, and I hope the new book From Triggered to Tranquil is helping this, we are learning to be better observers of our own reactions and better observers of our own, like, control patterns, like the tendency to fill in the blanks when somebody says something. Oh, I fill in the blank according to my own fears and needs. So we're getting better at noticing that, getting better at, maybe when you're in the middle of a trigger reaction, you don't even know you're triggered, but we're learning to observe, oh, these things that happen inside my body, like tight chest or a feeling of wanting to run away or hide, these things are evidence that I'm triggered. Or these thoughts, like that idiot, or why can't you ever, those kinds of thoughts, those are evidence that I'm triggered. So already, by beginning to self-observe in that way, we're getting above the level of the problem, and we're getting more problem-solving capacity. Now, when I teach couples to deal with conflict, and this also comes from mediation, from win-win mediation and negotiation theory. So these are sort of tried and true principles. The idea of, hey, it's our reactive cycle that's the problem, honey, not you. It's not you're the problem. The problem is that the more you question me about what I've done and who that last phone call was from, the more secretive I become. And the more secretive I become, the more suspicious you become. And there are many, many reactive cycles like that in couples. And teaching a couple, because that's been my main work all these years, teaching a couple to observe their patterns of interaction is very powerful. For then, okay, we're starting to discuss whether we should send our child to private school or not, let's say, and it costs a lot of money. Let's be mindful before we even start this discussion. That's what I teach couples to do. Let's be mindful of what might get triggered inside of me. So these are the kind of tools that I think we can begin to apply here around the COVID polarization, or any polarization. So we learn what our patterns are, like our reactive cycle. We learn what our reactive stories are, our typical reactive stories. And I'm going to do a screen share right now in preparation for talking about the vaccine question. Here is a screen share. So in the book From Triggered to Tranquil, and also my other book, 5-Minute Relationship Repair, one of the big things that empowers you to pause when you're triggered is noticing your reactive story, like the words that play in your mind. Now, the words that play in your mind might not boil down to what I've got on the screen here. They might not, I mean, they eventually boil down to that, but you might not be conscious that this deeper unconscious story, i.e. fear story, is another way to say it, is kind of running you from your unconscious. And if you can see, like, which of these tends to be a sensitive area for you? Are you more sensitive to being judged or criticized, being ignored or left out? And even as you think about who you've interacted with around the COVID issue, or even just feelings you've had reading things, I'm going to stir the pot in a minute and read some different statements from both sides of the question. But I want to get you starting to self-reflect first, because it's very empowering, actually, to know what your automatic tendencies are. And almost all of us have some kind of an automatic tendency when there's a hot difference to take it personally. We take, especially with people that are important to us, not so much with the store clerk, but if you're in an intimate relationship with somebody and they have a different style or a different belief than you, we do tend to take things personally, because what's threatening and triggering to humans nowadays is disconnection from somebody who's important to us. And differences threaten disconnection. Think about that. No, my partner wants to send our kid to private school. Let's take that one. And I'm the breadwinner and he's the house husband, let's say. And I'm already working to the max to just be able to put food on the table. His value on education, his frivolous, I would call that frivolous. That's, that's not basic. I'm just basically trying to pay our bills here. His value on education, which is objectively a good value, is going to threaten me, and I'm going to get triggered. I'm going to think, geez, you don't care about my needs and how hard I work, and it's all on my shoulders. And that's here in this list of fear stories. I'm afraid my needs don't matter. And that's typically where people go when they're triggered in a close relationship. I'm afraid my needs don't matter. Sometimes has some flavor of these other statements. So take a moment and just soften up around your own tender tendency, whatever it may be. Yeah. Because these are vulnerable things.
Yes. Dude here's good.
I wish I could mute that person. Maybe we could ask the person on the phone to mute themselves.
It's my birthday? You're kidding, right?
And I'm going to do a show. I think I'll do, well, I'm not going to do a show of hands right now, but I'm going to stop the share and see if there's any questions. Just any questions at this point before we get into the material about the vaccine.
Sounds like
and I'm going to try muting this person and see if that helps. Maybe I'll mute all the people that I can't see. Okay, good. That'll be quieter. All right, just any comments or questions at this point before we get into the hand raising and kind of voting on things. Okay. So last time, first of all, how many of you were at last month's COVID Culture Wars webinar? I know David was, and I was, Sandy was, anybody else? Okay, so, and Monica was. Okay, well, welcome back. And last time I talked, and I'm going to just summarize this piece. Last time I talked about what are some of the filters that people look through in order to make sense of the data in the world. Now, there's so much confusing data in the world, and there is a tendency for us to want to simplify things, and that's actually what the word meme means, and there's all these different memes now, and memetic tribes, if you have ever heard that term. tribes of people who subscribe to a particular meme, and a meme is an oversimplified statement. But the human mind tends to grab onto things that are, quick, easy, done kind of thing. So one of the things that is filter how we make sense of data is the memes that we've read. I mean, just the number of times we've heard something. And those of us who are on social media, we do get, you get to read certain things over and over, and exposure. So the amount of times you're exposed to something in your life will influence you. One of the main things, of course, is that filters. One of the main other filters, I'm just going to name a few just to kind of get perspective on our beliefs, is our personality style. And last time I talked about the get it done person, the person whose style is, hey, it's good enough, versus the do it right person who's very scientific and who collects a lot of data before making a decision. So just even with those of us who are here, how many people feel like you're a little more of a get it done person? Show of hands, versus a do it right person. So I'm definitely more that quick, good enough, got it done. Okay, how many people identify more as the do it right person? More the scientists, engineers. Okay, take your time, maybe be cautious. Okay, thank you. Now, seeing people raise their hand about that difference, that's not threatening at all, right? Although if you were a manager in a corporation and you're a get it done person, and all the people who are working for you are the do it right people, and they go so slow and they can't make any decisions quickly and that kind of thing, then that difference might be polarizing and create conflict. But here, no. So the more interdependent we are with somebody and there's a difference, the more that difference can be threatening. The subculture that you identify with is a huge filter. Like a lot of us identify with the kind of alternative health subculture. Take care of your own health. Don't go to doctors every time, look it up yourself and figure out what you need. Trust your body wisdom. So there's a lot of us who have more, and we belong to, it's like a subculture, because those are the people we talk to. How many people are more in that culture, sort of don't expect doctors and don't, maybe even don't trust the medical establishment? How many people are somewhat in that subculture? So, yeah, and some of us, we could be, you just raise your hand, whatever level, and then along related to the whole subculture thing is kind of your family tradition. Like you hear people say, well, I come from a military family, so I'm gonna go to war and serve my country. And other people would say, well, I was raised in the Vietnam War era. I came of age then when we really learned to question the validity of wars, and so those are all different kind of, those are subcultures. And another filter, so subculture can be a filter. Just the number of memes you've been exposed to can be a subculture. Also, your actual life experience can be not a subculture, can be a filter. That's an important filter. If somebody has had bad experiences with a medical procedure or a pharmaceutical drug in the past, or if they know they have sensitivity to environmental toxins, that kind of thing. That can be a filter. No, I don't go to certain places, and I kind of have that filter. I don't go to certain places where the air quality is going to be bad. I just won't go there. I won't go there on vacation. If I'm going to an outdoor dance and the air quality is bad, I'll leave, stuff like that. So it's just personal sensitivities, but it's a filter. And I think the filters that I've been naming are pretty much below the level of consciousness most of the time. But above the level of consciousness is our values. So a lot of us would say, I value self-care. I do what I can for a lot of good self-care practices, that sort of thing. Other people, if they're honest, they might say they value self-care, but they really don't have a very healthy lifestyle. And so you can have a value and not live up to it. That's good to know. So I'm giving you all the things that it's good to know about oneself before you just all of a sudden believe something and run with it, particularly how you think about people who are on the other side of what you believe. That's really at issue today, is how we think about people who are different. So values are conscious. Like I value doing everything I can to support my health and my immune system. How many people would say that that's an important value, is health, personal health? And I mean that like you really like have a lot of energy on that. Okay, now given that, how many people realize that there are at least one or two things that you do that conflict with that value? I mean, hey, so having a value and having a belief and having a position, it helps to realize that we're probably not as consistent as we might think we are when we're in the heat of an argument. We'll get all identified with that particular value and perhaps forget about some of the addictive things that I do. And I'll be judging somebody else for the addictive things they do because I believe their addictive things are worse than mine, perhaps. Okay, so where I want to go now is I'm going to make some statements that have to do with your position on the vaccine. And we're going to raise our hands if we agree with this statement. And the people who have your screen off, it would be nice if you could perhaps use the hand raising function. So this now it gets interesting. I'm going to ask you to reveal where you're at with things. So here's one statement. There is solid data that countries and United States with low vaccine rates have higher COVID incidence. Did you hear that? How many people agree with that? Okay. Let's leave our hands up and see how you feel. And some people are choosing not to raise your hand. You don't believe that. Okay, here's another one. Pharmaceutical companies have been known to lie, alter data, and minimize risks in the past. Okay, some people are really enjoying raising their hands on this one. Okay, but notice what happens if you see that somebody's not raising their hand and you are. Take your time with this. Like, hey, what's with this person? They don't even believe that, that type of thing. we start to begin to notice our resistance to something. And in the getting real work, I find resistance to what is being one of the most fruitful areas of inquiry for self-knowledge. So really get interested in what you resist and notice how you resist. Judgmental thoughts are one of the most popular ways that we resist what is. So let's watch for those. Okay, here's another statement. It's a public health matter, physical, economic, and mental health. So it's a public health matter. So in such instances, like whether you get the vax or not is what I mean here. So whether you decide to get the vaccine or not is seen as, I should see it as a public health matter. So in such instances, individual rights need to be tempered by concern for collective well-being. How many people agree with that? Okay, so I'm the only one that agrees with that. David, sorry, David. All right, good to note. All right. On the other side, I'm kind of alternating back and forth here, you'll see. It's a bad precedent to give the state the power to dictate matters of individual liberties. So this is that slippery slope thing. We have to be careful how much power we give to the government. Okay. All right. A lot of hands on that one up. And how does that feel? How does that feel to you to be sort of go, oh, these are my people or whatever? Notice your self-talk here. There's so many people who raise their hand on that one. The side effects of the vaccine, so this is agree or disagree with the statement, okay? The side effects of the vaccine are generally less serious than a serious bout with COVID. And notice your feelings too, as you're seeing other people with their hand raised, or maybe you have your hand raised and you see other people not, just kind of, this is all about being attuned to our own nervous systems. All right. Here's another statement. Do you agree or disagree? There is no data yet on long-term side effects of these vaccines. And it's okay to kind of do this or this too. Okay, but we'll just see it. Okay, that one wasn't too controversial. Here's one on the yes, get the vaccine side of the issue. The vaccine helps allay people's fears about gathering and being social. Anybody agree with that? If you agree with that, raise your hand. It helps allay people's fear about gathering and being social. Okay. Interesting. And on the other side, there is nothing to fear. In other words, there's nothing to fear about getting COVID. There is nothing to fear if your immune system is good. Take charge of your own health and don't expect doctors to have all the answers. How many people agree with that? Okay. Feel into that one. And I've only got two more here. While it's important to take responsibility for one's own health, how many people really know how to do that in this addictive, quick fix society? Okay, and finally, too many, do you agree with this one? Raise your hand if you do. Too many of us have given away our power to create a healthy lifestyle for ourselves. Okay. And before I stop with this exercise, I would like to have you think if there's a statement you'd like to make having to do with the vaccine issue, to get vaccinated or not, or it could have to do with mask wearing if you like to say something about that. Would somebody want to make a statement and then see how many people agree with it? But if you make the statement, it has to be a statement that you believe. Okay. Anybody willing to make a statement that you believe? Okay, Eve, unmute yourself. You already did. Make that statement.
Okay, so my statement is fully vaccinated people can still transmit the disease.
Okay, how many people agree with that? All right. Not too much diversity there, not too controversial, Steve. And now Eve Albright, you had a statement.
Yeah, that threw me a little bit. So I believe that the vaccine should be a personal choice.
Good one. Okay. Feel into how we feel here. Anybody else got a statement? I saw a hand up, but I don't. Oh, here it is. Gail Eve. Yes.
So how many believe that natural immunity can be as effective than the artificial immunity from the vaccines?
Let me just check in with people here. Anybody get triggered by anything at all so far? Take a moment. Did you have any, and I actually can remember feeling something, but I'm trying to remember what it was that had me feel that now. So take a moment and see if you can remember getting triggered at all, even if you don't remember what it was. Let's start there. The way I knew I was triggered is I raised my hand, but I wanted to explain myself, like, don't misunderstand me. That came up for me. Anybody have that fear of being misunderstood? Trigger come up, that fear? Yeah, I noticed that. Anybody want to raise your hand just saying you were triggered and you're not sure if you can remember what it was? I think I would have to say that too. I can't remember. And then thank you. I guess we'll lower our hands. How about anybody who got triggered and you can remember what it was? Maybe. Okay, Eve and Francesca and Sandy too. Would you tell, I'm going to ask you each, Eve, what triggered you, if you're willing to say?
Well, I knew I was triggered because I started to feel anxious. I don't know the answers. So that's why I did this hand instead of this or this. And I feel like I don't have enough information yet. But I'm supposed to know the answer because that's my personality. So that's a trigger for me is not having enough information and wanting to know the answer, but not really clearly knowing the answer.
Good one. Thanks. Sandy, would you share what your trigger was?
Yeah, it was the one about the natural immune system. And I just got like, well, some people have got a strong immune system and that would be better, but some people haven't. And they're really, I just kind of, it was too complex for me to process it. And then I just felt like confused and overwhelmed. But also I noticed vaccines are a big issue in my long family history. My great grandparents died as a result of the public vaccinations.
Mm.
So
Yeah, that's helpful, Sandy.
it's a bit of an issue.
That's the thing, like I said, you come from a family of doctors or a family of military or a family of people who've been hurt by medical procedures. I actually come from a family who've been hurt by medical procedures myself. So I guess we're in the same tribe there. So let's hear from Francesca. What triggered you, Francesca?
I don't remember exactly what the question was, but everybody raised their hand, or there was I felt like it was a majority, and I noticed, I feel safe here because I'm in my own home. I'm not, and so I'm taking bigger risks. I'm showing up and telling more of my truth because I'm separate from you. I'm not in the same room with you. And when I noticed that the majority of people agreed with me, there was a part of me that really wanted to feel safe, like, oh, here's my people, I'm together. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not alone. And immediately I had I felt like, oh, unsafe. It's like, because I'm getting really challenging reactions being in the real world with my ideas and beliefs and what I'm doing for myself. And when I saw the people that I was, I was the same as, in that moment, I was the same as you. I got scared and sad that even being having some agreement or feeling not alone in this belief, it amped up my feeling of not feeling safe. Like, oh my gosh, there's more of us that are out here, having a hard time is the story that I told myself. And so that in this instance, being with people who were the same felt less safe. Then, oh my gosh, I finally found my people and I can relax. And I thought that was noticing that was the reaction. And what happened in me was really, it was like, wow, isn't that interesting? I've been so isolated and so alone and so longing for this, where's the people and then I finally get that connection in a moment. And it's like, it was the opposite of what I thought that it would do.
Let me take what you said, Francesca, and I'm going to create a scenario here for other people to see if they relate to. Some of us, and this isn't about you, Francesca, because I don't know your childhood story, but this has to do with being triggered in a similar situation that Francesca said, where it looks like I'm safe and I'm starting to feel warm and fuzzy, but then something comes up. Am I safe? Can I trust this? And some people have a pattern in intimate relationships where you get to feel so loved and together with somebody, but when it gets almost like too good, something always happens to like destroy it. And some of those people who have that kind of adult, I'll call it configuration of thoughts and feelings and experiences, grew up in homes where love and attention was inconsistent. And there's a lot of us who grew up in homes where sometimes your parent was really appreciative and loving, and other times they would like almost attack you and be like, super critical or just unavailable. And I wonder if some of us would be willing to raise our hands, if like to let others know, I had something like that go on in my childhood. Was there anybody who had that? Would those of us who are willing raise your hand here? Yeah. I mean, this is a very tender kind of a thing to admit to, but there's so many of us, and this is about trigger reactions. Those of us who had, let's call it inconsistent love, of it, the love was available, but it was inconsistent. It will train the little child to kind of be more on high alert, be more vigilant, am I going to get it now? And in the attachment literature, that will usually be the more pursuer, preoccupied, anxious attachment type of partner. These kinds of things come up in intimate partnerships, these patterns. So it's really helpful to connect the present story that came up with some awareness of, wow, there's something deep in me. There's something deep that creates this. So let's take a moment here, and just those who did raise your hands, and not everyone did, but feel how that young person, that young version of you, coped with that. And the gift of that is these people are often very intuitive, very sensitive to their environment. They notice things. I didn't grow up with that kind of childhood, and I have many friends who did. And my friends seem to just notice all these little nuances. Like my intimate partner, for example, he's just like always noticing these little signals that something's not safe. And he'll come and apologize to me for yelling at me, and I'll go, what? That didn't bother me, or he'll say, did you notice that person, putting you down or something? I'll go, no, I took that as friendly. So our childhoods have a lot to do with the filters that we walk around with. And the more we can bring tenderness and compassion to these early experiences, the more I think we can extend compassion to others, even those who have a different view. It works that way in couple relationships, and I have yet to see whether it's going, these general principles of healing divides, whether these general principles can expand out to the culture at large. But I know when a couple has a triggering incident and they both pause and reflect on their childhood pain and bring compassion to that little 7-year-old kid who 1 minute she was loved and the next minute she was rejected, and just really feel tender toward that little one that's me at 7. I come back then to repair after a triggering incident where we both said things, or at least thought things, that weren't very friendly toward our partner. So we come back and we say, I'm sorry, I said that judgmental thing, or I called you that label, or I'm sorry, I held those blaming thoughts toward you. I was triggered. That's what a repair looks like. You're not making yourself wrong for being triggered, because you've done this inner self-compassion work, and you're not making your partner wrong for being triggered. You're understanding that those things happen. And if we can remember that, you know, I've got this little wounded child, and sometimes the things I say come from that part of me, and so do you. There's much more capacity for letting go of hurts and forgiving and beginning again in a couple relationship. Now, does this apply to the collective? I'm experimenting with that. I have done a lot of work in the past, like between, I used to do black, white encounter groups in the 60s, where we had an inner circle and an outer circle. And, you know, all the blacks would talk about their experience, and then the whites would reflect how that felt. And then the whites would get in the center and talk about their experience. And then there'd be some other things that we did. And there is people during those things, people, when they got to the deeper part of their own feelings and reactions and were just witnessed, there was a kind of healing of the blaming and the finger pointing. Now and I also did work with the hawks and doves during the Vietnam War era, where, and this was more of a, what's called a T group setting, a group of people where you just sit and get to know each other. Basically, it's kind of like an honesty salon, the T groups, but these were with stranger groups who were sent there by their companies to learn better communication skills. So they weren't people who were necessarily interested in personal growth. They came because their business paid for them to be there, and they sat in a room with a facilitator, me, for 5 solid days, day and night, mining, well, what's coming up for me now when I hear you say that is. That's what an honesty salon is. It's sharing here and now feelings and thoughts in response to what I've just heard from you. When people get into those kind of settings where awareness is as important as getting your own way and being right and convincing, there's a kind of a humanness and a common humanity that seems to emerge. And those memories are coming back to me now, because I sort of went away from doing work with very polarized groups. I used to do a lot of that. And then I said, man, this is too hard. I don't want to do this anymore. So I started working more with individuals and couples. But I'm remembering that there was some melting of the defensive, aggressive thing between people. So I'm just sitting with that. And that's kind of why I'm beginning these conversations, to see, is there any hope for melting the right wrong and being more willing to listen to, well, what did lead to you believing the way you believe? And can I make room for that in my world? So I imagine that me saying some of this stuff right now is causing some of you to go, yes, but, no, there's the possibility of a vaccine mandate coming down, and we're going to need vaccine cards to get on airplanes and to travel and to go to restaurants. You know, that's probably very scary. Did anybody have sort of any kind of a yes, but, you know, Susan, yeah, that's all nice in theory, but here and now, there's some real threatening things that are threatening me. So I'd like to see a show of hands. Who kind of has a little bit of a yes, but going on there? Lynn, would you want to say anything about, about that? Just make a statement about where you're at.
Well, for me, I've been feeling increasingly nauseous for whatever reason, as the topic is explored. I imagine it's a lot of very deep fear that I'm not clear about. But I was mandated to get a vaccine if I wanted to continue working. And I wasn't ready to retire, so I did get the vaccine. Had quite a few side effects that I didn't appreciate. And now they're talking about boosters. And I'm like, okay, then I think I'm going to have to get ready to retire. You know, whether it's in my timing or not, because I don't want to put more of this junk in my body. I spend a lot of time and energy taking care of myself and making sure my health is good. And I've worked in the health field all my life, and I've witnessed a lot of, you know, like a client would be hospitalized and, oh, we'll have to keep him a few weeks was the comment. And then whoops, the insurance was over and, oh, he's ready, he's cooked. Okay, let's discharge the person. And it's like, and a lot more. I have lots of stories about malpractice that people that are not in the field know about. And it's
I'm going to pause you right now because the first part of your statement was so personal, and I saw some thumbs up, Lynn, that I want to get some feedback. How many people felt some kind of empathy for Lynn as you were listening to her? Let's take that in, Lynn. And there's hearts, people raising their hand. No, it seemed like it was just so easy to feel empathy for you that I wanted to interrupt you before you got onto something that wasn't personal. But I can have empathy for all the things that you've seen also. I know that it still was personal, what you were saying about people being discharged and that sort of thing. But take that in, Lynn. How many people feel empathy for you right now?
Yeah, I feel tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
Having the same reaction as
Francesca?
where at the same time, I don't want to let down my guard because it could be dangerous because
Wow.
there's they're pretty angry out there telling me that I'm killing other people if I don't get vaccinated. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Okay. That would be.
So let's honor that too. This is, and I'm gonna wrap up a couple minutes before the hour because I have to move to some other activity that I'm doing in a minute here. But I want to take a moment to just appreciate you guys for what you've revealed today. I mean, there really is some deep emotional history in each of us that conditions our true respectable values and choices here. And it's been really good to listen to your different statements on this. And we all admitted, almost all of us admitted that we got triggered somewhere along the way. So let's just hold the compassion for how difficult it is. And I'm going to use the word out there because there was no heavy contentiousness here in this Zoom call, but we know that there are people in the world who have very strong views that differ from ours. So how do we keep ourselves feeling emotionally safe? But even more important in my world is emotionally developing, using whatever shit happens to you in your life as a starting point for inner inquiry and development, seeing more than I saw last month or last year. So as long as your main focus in life is growth, development, self-knowledge, then the world becomes a lot safer. So I'm going to leave you with that thought right now. And I do these free calls the first Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So thank you so much for being part of my community here and for
Thank you.
really doing a deep inquiry today with me. Thanks. Okay,
Thank you.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Susan.